Good evening, everyone. I am Melanie Dragon, board member of New Jersey Public Health Innovation Political Action Committee. And today I'm joined with fellow board member and co-founder, Rula Ballantyne. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
So it's October 13th, and we are quickly approaching the 2022 midterm elections. And it is truly great to come live once again from our PAC chat stream and bring you the significant 2022 District 5 Congressional endorsement. If this is your first time tuning into the PAC chat, welcome. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. Myself and the entire board of NJPHIPAC are deeply committed to protecting and advancing health freedoms here in New Jersey and beyond. Our endorsement process was developed with a set of standards and integrity. Every endorsement we make requires at minimum that the candidate complete and submit an NJ5PAC survey and participate in an in-depth interview with the board of directors. Other factors and considerations are prior voting records of the candidate, if there are any, their public positions or statements on matters that affect our mission, and more. Ultimately, NJ5PAC standards are to endorse candidates with transparency, integrity, measurement without bias, so that when you see the NJ5PAC Gold Seal endorsement, the New Jersey voter can be confident that this is the best candidate for our collective mission. I'm going to hand it over to Rula.
Hi, everyone. I'm so sorry. What everyone is here for, to meet the man of the hour, I have the pleasure of introducing congressional candidate Frank Pallotta. Frank, thank you for joining us. And for those who are unfamiliar with the parameters of Congressional District 5, it includes parts of Bergen, Passaic, and Sussex counties. Hi, Frank. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you so much, Rula, for having me back again.
Of course. It's a pleasure to have you on. So first of all, and first and foremost, we'd like to thank you for being here. And second, congratulations on your official endorsement by NJ5PAC. Well earned and well deserved.
Thank you. And go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's an honor. It really is. We've been talking for a long time, and I followed what you guys are doing, and what you stand for could not be more important, especially coming out of the last few years. So I do appreciate the endorsement a great deal. Thanks.
We appreciate those words. Thank you, Frank. So we're going to start up with a few questions, and let's jump right in.
Okay.
Can you give us a look inside of who Frank Pallotta is personally, professionally, outside of politics, and what the turning point for your life that you can attribute to this run for Congress?
Well, again, thank you so much for having me. My whole career has been outside of politics. This is my first run for office. I did run in 2020, but United States Congress in District 5 is my first attempt at running for office. And I think that's unique to look inside who we are. I think we need more of this. We need more of people who really have a background in the private sector, a background in helping people. And that's where I come from. My first thought about, getting involved in the race and why I wanted to get into the race comes from my private sector background. And as you all know, and I think with all the candidates that you've had come and speak to you, it's about service. It really is. This is something that I've thought about on the periphery going back more than 25 years, but most notably in the last 5 years. It's something I've thought long and hard about, and could not be more excited. Unfortunately, it's needed. It's needed now, given where we've seen the economy certainly coming out of the last few years of what we saw. I think that the passion for what I wanted to do and the timing for when I'm doing it could not be better.
Right. And we've spoken so much, and you gave us a great insight about what you do and the organizations that you're involved with and everything that really led you up to this race for Congress. And we got to learn a little bit more about your attributes that would make you such a champion for health freedom. Can you share with our community tonight some of your views on our issues and concerns as a community, and your thoughts on it as well?
Sure. Well, look, I've always been, and I believe, people with a strong Republican, principled Republican background, uh, freedoms lead us every day. It's why we're here. Going back 250 years, it was really about making sure our freedoms were not just kept and withheld, but over the last 250 years, we fought wars for them. More than 1 million people, who served our country, fought and died for those freedoms. And it's just something I thought intuitively would always be there, and something that we would always, look to. The Constitution is a living and breathing document that, in my opinion, has been trampled over the course of the last 3 or 4 years or so. And it wasn't just our basic rights, our freedom of speech and things like that, freedom of expression, but our medical freedoms, which no one really thought of before 2019 and 2020. They have been trampled, and it made me go back and think about just how precious those freedoms are. And when we saw this lack, and we can talk about it a little later if you want. I don't want to get into it now, but this lack of respect, not just for our freedoms, but for the science that dictates where we should go, and how how our state and how our local government and the federal government should be treating and working around those freedoms to make sure that they're preserved, is the reason I'm running. So it's both, in my opinion, it's great that we found this opportunity to run, from what's going on in the economy and with our police and things like that. But just overall, our freedoms are being challenged. And if we don't take hold right now of how precious those freedoms are, it's my opinion. I think if we don't grab them now, I'm afraid they'll be gone.
Absolutely.
Agreed. Yes,
Yeah.
for sure. And that's why we're so proud to stand by you as the congressional candidate for District 5. Because while some Americans believe that COVID is over and that the mandates have ceased, there are so many that are still dealing with the unrest of their job loss or discharge from their employment or from the military, expulsion from their universities and colleges. And we're really concerned about those issues that are being trampled upon still in 2022. Specifically, I want to point out that in New Jersey, the healthcare professionals and the corrections officers and anyone working in congregate settings are still kept to the up-to-date, quote unquote, mandate, as well as testing requirements, or they face unemployment.
Right.
And even though, our president said on the 18th of September, he declared the pandemic was over, and that on the 23rd of September, the CDC changed their guidelines to note that vaccination status is no longer used to inform source control or screening or testing. But here in New Jersey, we're still kind of in this antiquated way of thinking. So what are your thoughts on these vaccine mandates being enforced upon American citizens? And, what do we need to do, or what can you do in Congress to prevent this from happening again?
Well, the mandates that still exist, and as you said, there are mandates that dictate if someone doesn't follow certain rules that they may not believe to be accurate or according to science, they could lose their job. And they could lose their job in an economy that we all know is challenging. We saw, 8.5% inflation or 8.3% inflation come up today. We know there's still a challenging job market. So this is about control. These mandates are not about anything. They're not about science. They are about control. And it's one of the things that we mentioned early on, Melanie, is when we have these controls by the government that impose upon us these restrictions simply because they want to, there is no science behind them. That's a challenge. That's a challenge of our freedoms. It's a challenge of our rights. So what would we do in Congress? It looks like the Republicans will take the House and Congress. And again, this should not be a political thing. Our freedoms and our rights are not about parties. They're about what's right and what's wrong. But I do know, in speaking with leadership in Washington, Republican leadership, and even some Democrats in leadership who understand that this has been an overreach, some moderate Democrats, when we get together and we decide we want to look back, and we want to look back at an economy that's been trampled, at our police who have been marginalized, at people who are fearful of losing their jobs, we need to put these protections in place that do adhere and do back the science that's there. But what we really have to do as citizens, which I am still right now, I'm not a politician, we need to speak up. And we need to speak up without fear that progressive politicians who do like these controls are going to continue to push us down. They're going to continue to call people who want to stand up for their children and their rights extremists. I'm being called an extremist. Anyone who stands up for what I believe is the proper science that we should be looking at are called extremists. So we need not just people to stand up, our residents to stand up, our constituents. Politicians need to stand up. Some need to stand up. Democrats, they need to stand up against their party. Republicans who have started to stand up and speak louder need to continue to do that. There's always been this push that if you stand up against these freedoms, these mandates, that you're all about wanting to harm the society and you want to harm the population. That's not been the case. New Jersey in our state was the last to lift all our mandates and the last to lift some of the voting restrictions. And we know that it was about politics. So as a politician, I don't want to say we're going to be about science, but science does dictate where we should go, real science. So we're going to make sure that we protect our Constitution, we protect the public from any health crises. But when those health crises move on, it's about making sure we get back on track and protect this country.
Fantastic. I love your message. It's incredible. Health freedom to us is a basic human right, which we believe should not be defined, to your point, by any particular party. This isn't about party lines. Mm-hmm. What will you do to encourage representatives, regardless of their party affiliation, like you mentioned, mm-hmm. to reach across the aisle and, think about these issues in a different realm, not so party driven?
Well, Melanie, as I had said earlier, I'm from the private sector. I spent 28 years in the private sector. You don't spend that much time in the private sector and are able to have a career for that long unless you figure out how to reach across not just the political aisle, but people in different divisions, different groups, different companies. You have to work with the regulators as well. So when you're in the private sector, you have no choice but to figure out what the solution is. The solution that's best for, in the private sector, your shareholders and your customers and your coworkers. In politics, you reach across the aisle to figure out what's right for your voters. And I've said this before, again, in the private sector, the shareholders are who you're beholden to. In politics, it's the voters. There is no difference. So it's in my blood, it's in my DNA to not make this about politics, to not make this about party issues. It's about the people. And while Congress is a federal job, and it seems like a really big job, it's very local. There's 435 of us across the country that have to figure out how to work together to move the ball forward. So it's just in us, it's in who we are to be able to do that. So I don't think I have to change much to reach across the aisle, because I've always reached across the aisle, whether, again, it's in the private sector or what we're talking about doing right now. So when your focus is on the people and the district and the country by and large, the decisions on when and how to reach across become a lot easier.
Great. Thank you.
And I think New Jersey was a model for that in 2020 when we were able to stop that bill from moving forward. As we know, it was a Democrat, or it still is a Democrat majority. And like you said, Frank, earlier, when you were speaking, there are some, Democrats who do understand this issue and realize that this is not a party line issue, that mm-hmm. these are basic human freedoms that we are discussing, right? You don't need to be a Democrat or a Republican to acknowledge those. And I think that we delivered that message here in New Jersey, and with our involvement with candidates like you, it's ensuring that that message is also delivered on a congressional level, and not only here in the state of New Jersey. So hearing that you understand us and you hear us and you agree, and you would bring that message to DC is, exactly why we endorsed you as a candidate. So moving on slightly from this topic, we want to give you a chance, Frank, to give viewers more of an understanding about your overall campaign, what your biggest message is, and where are the sharpest contrasts between you and your opponent in this campaign that is going to drive people to the voting booths to vote for you? What messages are you delivering outside of medical freedom?
Okay, well, in the issues that are key to the people in the 5th Congressional District, coincidentally, they're the same issues, literally the same polled issues that reach across the state and across the country. And number one is the economy. The economy is the number one issue. It wasn't 4 years ago. It wasn't 3 years ago. It really wasn't 2 years ago. So that's the number one issue. The number two issue that's really affecting Congressional District 5 is crime. We're in Bergen County, as you know, and Bergen County has never seen the increase in crime that we are seeing now. And we think, as we sort of separate ourselves from our opponent, we've always been a Back the Blue campaign. We've always been very supportive of our police. We're also supportive of the communities that the police protect. My opponent is not. My opponent authored a bill, HR 7120, which was the defund the police bill. That was the biggest and the most sharpest contrast between myself and Congressman Gottheimer. He didn't, again, just sign the bill. He wrote the defund the police bill. While we were supporting police and there were cities burning across the United States, Josh Gottheimer funded that, authored that bill. So that's one of the biggest contrasts. Going back to the economy, you don't raise rates. You don't raise taxes in the middle of a recession. Now, it's my view that Democrat policies, of which Josh Gottheimer is part of those, helped move this economy where it is now, which is negative growth and very, very high inflation. So that's another big difference between my opponent and the entire Democrat platform and the Republican platform and myself is this should never be about raising taxes, specifically in a recession. So we've got, a stark contrast in the economy. We have a stark contrast in crime. And going back to why I think we all get along, me and your team, is our kids have become one of the biggest issues. It's one of the reasons that Youngkin won Virginia is this movement of protecting our children. And early on when we started talking, it was about vaccine and mask mandates and were they overreaching and were they the right thing? It's now turned through to CRT and some sex education curriculum. And the overriding issue that everyone has, particularly suburban moms and parents overall, is what these things are doing to our kids. So the economy, crime, and our kids are the top three issues. The fourth that rounds it out, which is the same in the state and across the country, is immigration. And immigration runs the gamut from, whether people pouring over the border, whether coming over with an intent to do us harm, but a porous border, which my opponent, Josh Gottheimer, stands behind this open border policy, is very different from mine. Now, I am not about canceling immigration and stopping immigration. I'm here because my father and his family came here from Italy. So we need immigration. We need the right immigration. We need it to be legal immigration. But those are the four biggest issues. And what we're starting to see here in Bergen County particularly, but it's starting to make its way in Passaic and Sussex County. The open border policy is leading to a tremendous opioid crisis. An addiction crisis. We're seeing deaths. We're seeing jobs being displaced because of the open border policy. So the contrast between my platform and the Republican platform and Congressman Josh Gottheimer and others, they are on the wrong side of every single one of the top four polled issues. So it will become easy when the voters understand what Frank Pallotta stands for and what Josh Gottheimer stands for. And it's my job to make sure that that continues to be the case. The last issue that's become a much bigger issue is while I came from the financial services industry, I spent more than 25 years on Wall Street. I was very attuned to when people break the law by violating what's called insider trading. Josh Gottheimer is one of the most prolific traitors in Congress. He was sanctioned and he was penalized for violating the Stock Act. He's been named by the New York Times, which is not the most conservative publication around, in having 43 conflicts of interest, where he is voting on certain issues and writing bills while he's invested in those securities that would benefit from those bills. So that, in my mind, is the biggest violation, the violation of the public trust by being involved in insider trading, along with the Pelosi's, to me, are the biggest issues that Congressional District 5 in the state are beginning to realize that our elected officials, I mean, there's a sacred oath that we take, and we know now that Josh Gottheimer has taken a different path on those sacred oaths.
You're right. And you would wonder why anybody with a common sense would want someone like that representing them in Washington, D.C. They're not even, small little hiccups. These are very serious things we're discussing. Yep. That no one should feel comfortable with having a man like that representing them in yep. Congress. He's not for the people, by the people. So, it's an important message to get across and to remind people who they are voting in and the character.
And to sort of put things in perspective, Josh Gottheimer entered Congress worth about $5 million. Certainly quite a bit more than the average American, but he was worth $5 million. Today, 4.5 years later, Josh Gottheimer is worth $19 million. $19 million. That's what happens when you're a prolific trader as a congressman and how you treat your portfolio. Everyone here, most people are struggling with the economy and struggling what's going on. When your net worth triples to $19 million, you're not one of the people. You're not for the people. And as you said, not by the people. So it's something we're all going to, pay attention to over the course of the next 3.5 weeks.
And in the next 3.5 weeks, we can't believe how fast this date is approaching. What can people expect out of you? What is the game plan for the next 3.5 weeks? Where can people see Frank Pallotta? Is it going to be at their front doorstep? I mean, what are you doing?
It's a little bit of everything. What my campaign manager told me on day one, 3 years ago, when we started to do this, got to get in front of the voters. You got to let them know. You got to look them in the eye and let them know I have their back. You can trust me. And we've had tremendous success doing that. The district is about 730,000 large, so it's a rather large district. But it's about making sure that we touch each voter. There's different methodologies and different ways that you touch voters, but there's no better way than putting a piece of paper in front of them to letting you know where you stand, or to shake their hand. So on our website, you'll see events that we have coming up. We're going to be getting out more and doing some more meet and greets around the district. It's a large district. It takes more than an hour and a half to drive from one end of the district to the other. So it is one of the largest in the states, but it's one of the reasons I love the district. We have urban areas of places like Hackensack and Bergenfield and, the larger neighborhoods in the central part of the district, to Sussex County, which I love. I love being there, the farms of Sussex, and it's just great to get around. So people are going to see me everywhere. Last weekend, we had about 14 stops on Saturday and Sunday, from autumn fairs to meet and greets to roundtable discussions. But it's about making sure people know when I get there, this is who I am and this is what I stand for. And I look forward to it. I look forward to getting out. But my phone is open. Our campaign office lines are open. My campaign manager and my staff here, that phone rings all day long. And when they're not holding me down, I'm the one answering the phone to see what people want to talk about. So I love getting out, as you guys know that, and that's what the game is about.
And we will attest to that here at NJPHIPAC. You've always been accessible. You're always there. We've had hours of conversations with you, and we know that your time is limited, but you give it, and you care, and you listen, and that is so important. So we appreciate that. And if you do that for us, we are certain you will do that for our community and the people of District 5.
Yep.
So Melanie is going to take over now. Mel, you're on.
Okay, Frank. We're going to get a little more intimate and up close and personal.
Okay.
We like to do a couple of what we call quick fire questions. So just, one word answers, or, just very quickly, just so our audience can get to know you like we've gotten to know you a little bit better.
Okay.
So tell us, what was your first paid job?
My first paid job was 2 jobs, one during the day and one in the evening. I stocked shelves at a deli in Woodhaven, Queens, where I grew up. And at night, I worked on an ice cream truck.
That's impressive.
My first customer interaction was vanilla or chocolate. So that was my first paid job.
That's great. We haven't had an answer of 2 jobs simultaneously, so that's definitely memorable.
Well, there is a day and a night, so I did have some time to kill, and that was my 2 job. And I'm still friendly with the family that owned that deli from 45 years. I worked there about 45 or 48 years ago, so still friendly with that family.
Oh, that's awesome. So tell us what your current favorite restaurant is.
I am from Mahwah. I love RP Prime. It's on Route 17. I got to know the owner just stopping in, and because I like to also make sure that we're spreading our Mahwah restaurant around. And I met Frank Gashi, the owner, and I love it. I love what he stands for. He's an immigrant, which is another reason we get along real well. And he's excited about us. But it's a great restaurant, RP Prime.
Awesome. We'll have to check that out.
You will.
Yeah.
Do you have any pets in your home?
I do not. It wouldn't be fair to the family being out on the campaign trail, sometimes 16 or 18 hours a day to have the care of. But I have to tell you, I was growing up in Queens. I had a dog. My family had a dog, a German Shepherd. And when I was working, I had a cat. And unfortunately, the cat was accidentally poisoned and I lost him. That was about 25 years ago. I never got over it. So I'd rather not deal with the pain of losing a pet again.
Yeah, that's difficult. Rule and I understand that.
Yeah, very much.
For sure. What is the most interesting destination that you've ever visited?
Ever? Not in the district, but ever?
Yeah, just ever. Yeah, whatever you want to.
A family vacation a bunch of years ago. We went to Italy, and I was fascinated with Rome and the Vatican specifically. It was, I think the boys might have been bored a little bit there, but the history that's there. We stopped at a place that the guide told us that this was on the same streets that Jesus Christ walked. And I just thought that was fascinating. And I don't think they were that tall back then because I walked in and it was kind of right at my height. But yeah, there was downstairs in the area where the stone walls, and I love the history. And you think about the 250-year history of the United States, and then you go to Europe and you go to Italy and in Rome, and we're talking about thousands of years of history.
Yeah.
And again, specifically, the Vatican, where it was such a solemn place to be. When I go back again, and it was a special invite that you'd need to go visit the grounds underneath the basilica where I think St. Paul's buried. The next time I go back, I'll go there. But Rome was a great trip.
So tell us the last TV series that you watched.
The last one I watched or the last one I liked? Because there's a bunch I watched.
Sure, whatever. Either or.
This is us. This is us. And I happen to roll across the pilot. And I loved it. And the reason I loved it, I'm a huge Pittsburgh Steelers fan. And when the pilot came on, it opens up with, it takes place in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But I'm a Steeler fan. I started to watch. But as you watched it over the seasons, the twists and the turns, I thought it was an excellent show. I think the critics thought it was excellent as well, but it was a great storyline. The twists were largely unexpected, from the house fire and the boys losing their father. But I loved it. And it's one of those ones where, now that it's over, you kind of wish it went a few more seasons. But yeah,
Right.
This was one of my recent favorites.
Yeah, that last episode
What's that, Rula?
I said that was a good, wholesome show. I liked it.
It was. And they were in
Yeah,
Pittsburgh, so I felt at home. They always referred to the Steelers.
yeah, that last episode was like a tearjerker. I really like felt invested in those characters.
Yeah, yeah. And I thought it was excellent walking through the train and by the time they
Yeah.
got to the caboose, yeah, it was
Very
a tearjerker.
powerful.
But you know me, I didn't tear at all, as you know.
I got it.
Not.
So who would you name as your greatest role model?
You know what? My dad. And I know that's a line that everybody uses, but you know, my dad raised our family. You know, I'm one of five. He was a toll collector. My mom was a nurse, and you know, they went back and forth as far as you know, working days, working nights. We couldn't afford anyone else to watch the kids, so that's how they worked it. But you know, as late as my dad worked, he was there for sporting events for me. He was very he was proud of me, you know, in that I was the first to go to college in my family and had to put myself through college and did that and got my first job. And I remember this, and I tell the story a lot because it's true and it means a lot to me. And my first job on Wall Street was right around when the movie Wall Street came out. And, you know, if you worked on Wall Street, you were vilified for everything, whether you were involved or not. And I remember my father, you know, noticing that I was going to a very prestigious firm, investment bank, Goldman Sachs. And he said, you know what, Frank, remember, you only have two things in life, your name and your reputation. And one of those two belong to me. And that just like me, that really hit me. I could still see him mouthing that. And it kept me sort of on the straight and narrow. And you know, it made me understand that there's more than just your job. There's a life, there's a career, there's a reputation that you have to uphold. And you know, while I had a pretty good, successful private sector career before my dad passed a couple months ago, this is all he talked about to everybody. He's voted every Republican going back to Dwight Eisenhower. He would tell everybody that his son is running for Congress. So, you know, he's my role model. He's the guy I want to make proud every day, along with my boys. So he's definitely my role model and he's on my shoulder and, you know, he's watching over, hopefully sprinkling a little pixie dust on District 5 on November 8th.
Yeah. And people know his name, that last name's everywhere. So.
Yeah. And you know what? My father's cousin was the mayor of Palisades Park, New Jersey. So there's also a little of that there, but people know the Pallotta name when I was going out, when I first started running. But they thought it was Bobby Pallotta. So
the mayor.
We're ready to go.
So this is the golden question and your last question in this quick fire. And we always ask this for our candidates. So what does health freedom mean to you?
Oh, it's an extension of our Constitution. It's an extension of our basic freedoms. You know, from you know, just how we want to take care of our kids and our family and our country and our Constitution. Health should be right in there. And I don't think a lot of people thought about it, Melanie, until we went through what we went through the last few years. There's always been this view. I don't know if there's always been a view, but I think people thought that the mindset of the government was always to take care of you. And when they started to remove our freedoms, when they started to dictate what mothers should be doing for their children, when our children, we know, were the least vulnerable to this COVID crisis, but the most vulnerable to the overreach, to the loss of these freedoms between the masks and the vaccines. Medical freedom is everything. Our freedoms are everything, but I don't think anybody thought even 3 years ago that medical freedom was as important as it is now. And just again, taking a quick step, you know, backwards and forwards, we're finding out now from the CEO of Pfizer, from people who were in the middle of this pandemic, that these mandates that were put in place, these freedoms that were trampled on, were supposed to be for the benefit and the health and the well-being of the voters and the residents and the constituents, and they were not. You know, we know that because with Phil Murphy and Josh Gottheimer in New Jersey, in our district, in District 5, we saw the greatest loss of life with veterans and seniors in facilities that should have been protected. And they weren't. And while they were screaming that they were working and trying to provide for our residents and what's best for them from a health standpoint, New Jersey and Phil Murphy has been doling out tens of millions of dollars in lawsuits that we've lost. So they never paid attention to the sciences, and as a result, they trampled on the freedoms that I want to make sure that we hold dear, Melanie. So it means a lot to me, and it means a lot more to me now based on what we lost only a couple of years ago. So you're going to get from me somebody who is going to fight tooth and nail for all of our freedoms, but particularly medical freedom, because I still don't think a lot of people understand how close we were to the brink. And we need to start, and we need to stand up, and honestly, we need to wake up, speak up, and get up and vote. That's what we need to do.
Absolutely. Right.
Agreed.
I wholeheartedly agree. And we also don't want it to be such a distant memory
Right.
that it allows for itself to happen again. Right. We
Right,
need to
right.
learn from what transpired and ensure that, those freedoms that were trampled on and that does not occur again. And I think a lot of people in the state got a quick lesson plan on what taking away health freedom looked like.
Yeah.
And the right to choose what, to do with yourself, your children, with your business, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm. I think really the timing of your organization was impeccable. I think people started to understand. And again, we talked about why Youngkin won in Virginia and why I am so humbled and honored to get this endorsement from you guys, because people understand now it's not just the First Amendment. There's freedoms. Again, medical freedom is a big deal. And when we lose that, we begin to lose our freedoms. We begin to lose our country. So I'm with you guys to the very end. I promise.
We appreciate that. Thank you, Frank.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you so much. And we want to give you this opportunity to share with our audience any way that they can support you, any final words that you might have to our viewers.
Sure. Look, there's two things you can never have enough of: money and votes, and in no particular order. We'd love the opportunity for people to go to our website, and you can go to pallottaforcongress.com and just take a look and read up on the issues that we stand behind. We're very transparent about where we are and what we stand for, and what we stand against. So I think it's very important to let people understand. Also, this will be my mission. I'm not looking for the next step in Washington. In fact, Josh Gottheimer pretty much lives there. That's not the way this is supposed to be. You're only 2.5 hours away from your district. This is about your district. This will be the last best job I ever have in my life. And some people look at this position in Congressional District 5 as sort of a stepping stone. It's going to be my cornerstone. I will work for the people of the district, the people who have met me and know me. And we've converted a lot of Democrats who believe that we're not playing a party game here. We're playing a people game. And it's about making sure the people understand who we are. So, I do want to let the people know that I'm in this. This is a mission for me. This is not a step. It's not a check the box. It's something that we and my team, from our campaign manager, Kelly Hart, all the way down to every volunteer that we have going out and helping us with phone calls and stuffing envelopes and knocking doors. We're not doing it for any other reason except it's the right thing to do for our country. It's the right thing to do for the state. And I'll make sure it's the right thing that we do for District 5.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Frank. On behalf of myself and the board of directors at NJPHIPAC, we want to thank you for your voice thus far with regard to health freedom and parental rights, and congratulate you again on your NJPHIPAC official endorsement in the 2022 congressional race.
Well, so I do thank you again. This is great. And if you want change, you have to go out on November 8th and you have to affect change. As we said, wake up, speak up, but don't forget to show up.
Oh, I love that. That's great.
That's a great, we urge any of our viewers who are from Congressional District 5 to not sleep on this election day, get out there and vote, right? And make sure your vote counts. Be there.
Great. And thank you
Absolutely.
guys so much again.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
You as well. Thank you guys again.
Thank you.